question together for the next few minutes. I'll be sharing my thoughts and reflections from the work that I do. Next slide, please. I want to start with a story, and I want you to picture someone as I tell it. Picture a teacher. She's in a classroom that was built for 30 students. Today, there are 52. The room is hot. There are not enough textbooks to go around. Some kids are sharing to a page. The internet cuts in and out. There is no teaching assistant. There has been no formal coaching or mentoring in over a year. And yet this teacher shows up every single day. She prepares lessons by hand in the night before. She remembers which students struggle with fractions and which ones light up during reading. She calls parents when kids don't come to school. She does all of these because she genuinely believes every child in that room deserves a fighting chance. Now, I want to ask you something. Is this teacher's problem a lack of effort? Of course not. Our problem is that the system around her was never designed to support her at this scale. It was never designed to give her the time, the tools, or the professional community she needs to do her job well. And that's why there is a starting point for everything I want to talk about today. The greatest challenge in education is not lack of effort from teachers or educators. It is that many systems were never designed to support educators at scale, which affects student learning outcomes and the kind of graduates or the workforce, future workforce members that we produce. So that truth has been very true for decades. But what's changed, what's genuinely new, is that we now have tools that could change it. The question is whether we use them quite very wisely to address the needs. And I would like to, share with us some global education challenges. And let's be honest about the scale of what we are dealing with. So when people talk about the education crisis, global education crisis, and like I said, I sit, privileged to sit in intersection of education, humanitarian work, and AI at a global level. So when we talk about education crisis, we often jump straight to solutions. And I want to sit with the problem. I want us to sit with the problem for just a moment, because if we don't understand the depth of it, we will build the wrong things. And I've seen this in my work and in the various projects I've supported over the years. Um, so learning poverty is still one of the most devastating realities in our world. Millions of children, not thousands, millions, reach the end of primary school unable to read a simple sentence with understanding. Foundational literacy numeracy continues to be a huge challenge globally, particularly in developing contexts. And it's not because these students are not intelligent, but because the system failed them. And the second challenge I want us to, reflect on is teacher shortages. These are getting worse, not better. In many communities, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia, the ratio of students to trained teachers is staggering. And in places where teachers do exist, many are working without the support they need. Even the social status of teachers has kind of diminished over the years. In 2016, I was doing my master's thesis in post-conflict Liberia on teachers. And in my interviews, one of the respondents mentioned that if you want to sign up to a life of poverty, then sign up to become a teacher. And this was in 2016, 10 years ago. And I can say that not lots has changed, but some things have even gotten worse. And I have the privilege of growing up in a teaching family. Both of my parents, back in Nigeria, worked as a teacher. My dad retired after 35 years of teaching. I had the opportunity of teaching for 1 year, so I'm very passionate about teachers, even in my work of delivering quality and equitable education to students. And so that those are some of the places or the context in which I'm coming from, which will give you some ideas of why I'm saying what I'm saying and the things I'll be sharing further. This third problem I wanted to share with us is digital access. It remains deeply unequal. We talk about the digital revolution as if it's arrived everywhere. It hasn't. There are communities where electricity is still unreliable, let alone broadband. And then there is curriculum mismatch, the quiet crisis, content that was designed somewhere else, in someone else's language, based on someone else's reality, being delivered to children who can see themselves in it. So, scale, personalization, inclusion, just at the bottom of this slide, and sustainability. These four words represent the four walls of the challenge we are trying to crack. And they are the lens through which I want us to evaluate every solution we discuss today, or we're going to come up with as social innovators. Next slide. So some key lessons from EdTech, also supported by recent research and evidence. I think we need to say this loud, that even if it's a little bit uncomfortable, the last decade of educational technology has taught us some hard lessons. We have had well-funded programs that distributed tablets to thousands of children and some no meaningful improvement in learning outcomes. We have had digital platforms that were beautifully designed but couldn't work in a school without reliable Wi-Fi. We have had content that was excellent in English but completely inaccessible to a child whose first language is Yoruba, like my first mother tongue language, or Hausa or Swahili. And what those experiences taught us is this: technology distribution is not transformation. So the evolution of AI will not necessarily lead to transformation if we don't, do the right things. So the challenge is not simply deploying technology. The challenge is designing systems that improve learning meaningfully. When does technology actually work in education? From the evidence we have, and a lot of evidence is currently being produced in this field, with attention, giving attention and resources going towards education technology, AI in education. Um, I'm going to share 5 things that are true from evidence. One, when teachers are involved, empowered, and supported, not bypassed or sidelined. When content is contextualized, built for the specific community is meant to serve. When implementation is evidence-driven, not hype-driven, not social media-driven, meaning we are measuring what matters and adjusting along the way. When communities are meaningfully involved, not just as recipients, but as partners, co-designers. And when the system is built for long-term sustainability, not just a 2-year pilot that disappears when donor funding runs out. These are not radical ideas, but they are ideas that are still being ignored in too many places today. Next slide, please. Why AI represents a major shift. So with all of that context, why am I optimistic? I'm very passionate about this, though I may sound sometimes very critical, but I'm very passionate about the power of AI in education and technology in education. I think AI genuinely represents something quite very different, not just another wave of technology in particular, but a real shift in what is possible. Let me tell you why. For most of history, personalized learning was a luxury. It meant having a private tutor, someone who could adapt to your pace, notice when you were struggling, adjust the explanation until it clicked. That was something only the privileged could access. If you're attending a school, a private school, that there are just 20 or 35 students to a teacher, and the teacher is qualified and well supported. But as I've mentioned, it's not the case in many contexts. We have 200, 150 students to one teacher in some schools. However, there's a quote I love from Patrick Stubbs. It's a computer scientist, a standard professor. And just last year or some months ago, I was doing some personal study for the work I do. And when I saw this, it reignited my hope for social innovation and my hope for using AI equitably and to deliver quality education for all. So it made a prediction in 1996. That is about 50 years ago. It says 50 years before most of us were even using smartphones. So that one day every child might have access to the personal service of a tutor as well informed and responsive as Aristotle. So AI can deliver that personalized, learning opportunity for every student, irrespective of a social cultural background or where you're located, with a smart and intelligent and responsive tutor like Aristotle, which Alexander the Great had the privilege of having in his lifetime. That felt like science fiction in 1996, obviously, but it's starting to feel like a real possibility now. AI opens up things that were previously impossible at scale. You know, Personalized learning pathways that adjust to each child, multilingual support, and I've actually used this in my work in supporting teachers across 5 languages. And I speak English and Yoruba, so I develop content in English, but I have teachers across the world that uses French, Swahili, Arabic, Portuguese as their language and the language of instruction in those schools. And so with AI, I was able to speak multiple languages to also make sure the content, the professional development support content, are also accessible to those teachers in those regions. So multilingual support, meaning a tool can speak to a child even in their own language. Adaptive content, that means a learner where they are teacher, the content can meet the learner where they are. And for teacher assistants, that gives educators time back. There's also faster feedback loops that help children learn from their mistakes in real time. But I really want to underline this. The framing really matters. AI is greatest value in education is augmentation, not automation. We're not trying to replace teachers. We are trying to give teachers superpowers. That is a fundamentally different mission. And how you frame it actually shapes everything about how you design and implement these tools. Now, let me give you some examples from my work. And next slide, please. So here's a concrete example. Think about what a teacher's day actually looks like. Before school, they are preparing lessons, often without much support or resources. During school, they are managing a large, diverse classrooms while trying to give uh, every student some individual attention. After school, they are marking, planning, following up with parents, and somewhere in between, they are supposed to be growing professionally. It is relentless, and it is no surprise that teacher burnout and teacher well-being is one of the biggest threats to educational quality worldwide. I am a strong advocate that you can't have quality education without quality teachers. You can't. Impossible. Not everyone agrees with me, but I continue to stand by that. Now, as we look at this slide, we see from left to right that limited preparation time becomes AI assisted lesson planning. The teachers still make the decisions, but they are not starting from a blank page. Large overcrowded classes becomes personalized scaffolding at scale, a tool that can give a different explanation to a child who needs it without the teacher having to divide themselves 40 ways. From teacher isolation becomes continuous digital coaching support, a mentor in your pocket, available at 10 o'clock at night when you're preparing for tomorrow. Where static resources become dynamic, adaptive content that updates and responds. Assessment overload becomes AI-powered feedback tools that surface what matters faster. The future is not teachers versus AI. The future is teachers empowered by AI. And I'm sharing these concrete examples because I've also observed that when we look at education technology initiatives, they are mostly student targeted. Our AI, supported education is towards the students. Very few of that. And in my own work and in the organization I work with, I'm changing that, that sort of, strategic direction to once we, support the teachers, learning outcomes ultimately follow. So that's why I'm giving more concrete examples, but you can think beyond the educator's perspective or from the teacher side and look more towards students. But like I said, there's a lot out there that focuses on students, but we need more in this area that looks specifically at teachers. So I am not in support of, a future where it is teacher versus AI. No, the future is teachers empowered by AI. And I want this to be the sentence that sticks with you, not because it sounds good, but because it has to be the design principle behind everything we build. So, innovation example one, accessible to teacher development. Next slide, please. So let me share a real innovation model with you. I'm keeping the specific details anonymous, but the approach is real. In other words, this is something I'm currently, working on. We are deploying, and just because it's not fully public yet, that's why I'm keeping some details anonymized. But if you want to have a chat more about this, please feel free to reach out after this. So imagine a teacher professional development program, but one that is built specifically for teachers in low resource settings, not a Zoom webinar, not a weekend conference in a capital city, something that fits into a teacher's real life. The learning is audio based. It works on a smartphone, basic smartphone. It doesn't need 4G. It doesn't even need a stable connection. The content is learner centered, meaning it was built around problems that teachers actually face in the classroom, not abstract pedagogy theory, real challenges, real classrooms, real solutions. And it includes inclusive practice, helping teachers think about how to reach the children in their class who are often invisible. Children with learning differences, those who are perceived to be shy, children whose first language isn't the language of instruction. Now, as you will see in the message box, here is what I want you to notice about this example. There is nothing flashy about it. No, advanced augmented reality, no metaverse classroom, no blockchain, credentials. The most radical thing about this innovation is that it is accessible. Sometimes the most powerful innovation is the simplest one, the one that actually works for the person who needs it the most. Accessibility, simplicity, relevance, and scalability. If your solution has these four qualities, you're already ahead of most. And so I'll share next the example two. Next slide, please. So in this example, this one gets closer to AI more specifically. Now imagine an AI-powered assistant for teachers, but delivered through a platform they already use every day. Not a new app. They have to download and learn. Something familiar, a messaging platform. And I can say, I can give us this detail, it's WhatsApp. And there are studies, from GSMA that research that the widespread of smartphone devices in developing countries, not just developed countries, is quite massive. That, WhatsApp is so accessible and replacing direct telecommunication ways, mobile telecommunication ways of interaction. So imagine now having an AI-powered assistant that is already part of a teacher's daily life. So teachers can ask it questions in their own language. They can request for lesson plan ideas. They can ask how to explain a concept differently. They can get curriculum aligned support. They can connect with a community of peers who are going through the same challenges on one platform. Now, what's the innovation here? It is tempting to say, oh, the AI, but actually the innovation is something deeper. It is a contextualized AI. It is accessible AI. It is practical AI. It is teacher-centered AI. Even before AI became mainstream in education, about 2, 3 years ago, I was in one of my work trip, providing capacity support for teachers in a very remote and under-resourced location in East Africa. And the idea was actually sown by a teacher that, we are so busy and less supported. I get to train them once a year because I can go to 100 countries in a year. There is no capacity, there are no resources will allow me to travel, though I still have to travel sometime when it's quite a critical need. But they said if we can have a tech support in the classroom, that makes our life easier. So technology alone is not enough. Technology alone is not enough. What makes it transformational or transformative is how it was designed with teachers, for teachers, in their language, on their own terms. So that's the lesson I want to leave with us, particularly in this slide. The two matters, but the design philosophy behind the two matters even more. So whatever area we just heard about, Mr. Kennedy's presentation, very inspiring. It's a tool that is designed to meet the needs of a very contextualized, challenge. Slide 9, please, as I begin to round up. Inclusion and equity. I need to say something now that I think about a lot, and it's something I want, all of us on this call to sit with seriously. There is a version of AI in education that makes things better, and there is a version of AI in education that makes inequality worse. And I believe that one of our speakers will be talking about the ethics of, etc. in that regard. If AI only benefits well-resourced schools or contexts, then we are risking accelerating educational inequality rather than reducing it. So think about what that actually means. If the schools that already have the best teachers, the most funding, and the fastest internet also get the most powerful AI tools, they pull further ahead than the rest. The gap widens. The children who most need it, who most need support, get the least. That is not a hypothetical risk. That is what has happened with every previous wave of educational technology, unless we deliberately designed against it. So what does designing against it looks like? One, low bandwidth solutions. Tools that function on maybe, for example, 2G, because that's the reality for hundreds of millions of people, even offline for systems. We have some partners that we're currently working together with to deploy offline AI, offline AI, which I feel will make me like one of the happiest people on earth. Offline for systems where core functions that don't require internet at all. Local language support, because learning in your mother tongue is not a privilege, it's a right. Inclusive design, building with the margins in mind from day one, not adding accessibility as an afterthought. Equitable infrastructure, which is a policy conversation as much as a technology conversation. Who is investing in connectivity in rural communities? Who is holding governments accountable for bridging the digital divide? These are the questions that have to be on the table. And as I go deeper in the next slide on risks and ethics, I will be doing a disservice if I stood here or sit here and only talk about the potential of AI without talking about the risks, because the risks are real, and anyone who tells you otherwise is either naive or selling something. There is bias and discrimination. And in my team, I'm privileged to be leading on the organization. I'm privileged to be leading on AI in education. And sometimes, when I get, feedback from colleagues that, this should not be our priority. This is like the fancy, what is just being hyped around. But I said, if we are not here, ensuring that, we can, curb bias and discrimination, we have the fancy tech guys that will be deploying these systems, without contextualization, without data protection of the vulnerable. So we need to understand from bias and discrimination that AI systems are generally trained on data. And if that data comes from a narrow slice of humanity, which most of it does, then the outputs reflect that narrowness. An AI that has never seen a child in rural Nigeria, for example, I was taught in a school in Bayelsa State, the southern part of Nigeria, and that's where I met my brother, Dr. Victor, doing our service here, and he can reflect on this as well. Or a classroom in a rural Indonesia will not serve that child well. It may actually disadvantage them, no matter how fast the tech is. We also have misinformation. AI can generate content that sounds authoritative, and it's completely wrong. In educational settings, that is dangerous. We also have privacy. When we talk about personalized learning, we are talking about collecting data about children. Who owns that data? Who protects it? Who can access it? These are not small questions, but very vital questions that we all need to answer. There's also overdependence. If teachers stop trusting their own judgment because an algorithm, told them something different, we have a problem. AI should sharpen professional judgment, not replace it. There's also unequal access, which we just discussed, but it's worth saying twice. And the governance gaps right now in most countries, there are no clear regulations for how AI should be used in schools, particularly in the global south. No standards, no accountability, and that's a problem. So innovation without ethics can deepen inequality instead of solving it. I'm not saying this to scare you away from AI. Like I said, I'm very passionate about AI. I'm saying it because I believe the people on this call are the ones who can build something different because we're exposed to this information today and the various other presentations. We can demand for better. We can hold the line on what is acceptable. Now, I'm going to share in the next slide, please. I'm going to share some opportunities for innovators. Now, this is more hopeful, and I'm beginning to round off with my presentation. Because I genuinely believe we are living in one of the most extraordinary moments for social innovation in education in particular, because that's my field. I want you to see the picture, the specific doors that are open right now, or picture the doors that are open right now. One, teacher support is the first area. AI planning tools, assessment, support, coaching at scale, translation for multilingual classrooms. The demand is enormous. The solutions are still early. Like if any of you is interested in this area, please speak to me. I can tell you with evidence and with stats that we need more teacher-focused solution with AI or educator-focused solution. So if you're working in this space, you are doing something that really matters. There's also localized learning or multilingualism, like I shared earlier. The vast majority of AI education tools are built in English for Western curricula. That is a massive gap. The need for local language content, culturally relevant AI, and contextual curriculum adaptation is urgent and mostly unmet. We also have inclusive learning. Think about learners in crisis-affected settings, vulnerable children, children with disabilities, children in extreme poverty. These are communities that are always an afterthought in edtech, education technology. They don't have to be. Evidence and research is a fourth, and I'd argue it might be the most important right now. We have a lot of pilots everywhere, and I'm also guilty of having pilots, but I'm doing my pilots from a place of deep reflection, questioning, and I've raised some of these questions with us today. So we have a lot of claims. We don't have enough rigorous evidence about what actually works for whom, in what conditions. So if you're a researcher here, that's a call to action. So 4 areas, all of them are real, all of them are needed, all of them wide open. Next slide. Funding an ecosystem. Now, let me be practical for a moment because I know some of you are innovators trying to figure out how to actually make things happen. There is money for this work. Google recently announced a 30 million funding on the deployment of AI in various fields in health, education, etc. in Africa, and they're calling for innovators. UN agencies, including my agency, as a core at the moment, looking for solutions that they can scale that support vulnerable and marginalized communities. So it's not always easy to find, but they exist. There are innovation grants, accelerator programs, strategic partnerships, philanthropic funding, public-private collaboration, pilot funding from ministries and NGOs. You can reach out to me and I'll be happy to share some with you if you're interested. The ecosystem is there. It is not yet perfectly organized, but the opportunities are real. As you see on the right side of the screen, my strategic advice would be to unlock those opportunities. Start with a real community problem, not a problem you have imagined, not a problem you have read about, a problem you have sat with in community with real people who design with the users. For example, if you're doing anything on education, bring teachers and learners, including parents, into your design process from the very beginning, not when you have developed your MVP, not to validate something you've already built, basically, but to shape it from the ground up. Test quickly, get something into the real world fast, and learn from it. A rough prototype in a real classroom will teach you more than 6 months of design sprints. Build evidence early. Document what you are doing, measure what matters. The funders will take you to scale once they see proof that this works. And prioritize sustainability. Sustainability from the start. A solution that works for 2 years and then disappears has not solved anything. Ask yourself, who will maintain this when the pilot ends? How will it keep running without funding? These aren't just strategic tips, they are the difference between creating impact and creating noise. Next slide, please. I can't see the screen.
Sorry, I think the person sharing has interruption. Okay, it's coming back on. It's now
All
on.
right, okay. So I want to share some quickly as I begin to round off. I want to share very quickly some 5 principles that I believe should guide every educational innovation, for example, especially in the age of AI. And I'll move through quickly, because of time. I think everyone is fairly self-evident, but I want you to hear all 5 together because they work as a system. One is human-centered. Design with communities, not for them. Dignity and agency are non-negotiable. Full stop. 2, teacher-led. Teachers must shape how AI tools are introduced and used in their context, not vendors, not government ministries, not well-meaning outsiders, philanthropies. Teachers. 3, context aware. There is no universal solution. Effective solutions are built for specific places, languages, learners. Copy and paste don't work or doesn't work at all, not even sometimes. 4, evidence driven. Measure what matters. Use data to improve, not just to impress donors or investors. There's a difference, and it shows in outcomes. 5, financial sustainability. I will say it plainly, innovation that cannot sustain itself financially will not create lasting change. Sustainability has to be designed from day one. Next slide, please. So the real question, I want to pause here for a bit because I've been talking for a while about what AI can do. The possibilities are real. The examples I've shared are real. The opportunities are real. But I want to ask the most important question of this entire presentation. The real question is not whether AI can transform education. The real question is whether that transformation will be inclusive. That's it. That's the whole thing. Because AI can transform education, I believe that. The evidence is pointing in that direction. The tools are getting better. The costs are coming down. But for whom? If the answer is for children in well-funded private schools in major cities or in developed countries, then we have failed. If the answer is for communities that already have good infrastructure, trained teachers, and reliable internet, we have also failed. The measure of this era in educational technology is not going to be the sophistication of the tools we build. It's going to be whether the child sitting in an overcrowded classroom with one textbook between 2 students, whether that child's life changed for good. So we have responsibility, ethics, impact. And I believe that that's what this conference, IGlow, is built on. And that is what I'm asking each of you to carry with you beyond this conference. So next slide, call to action. Now, what do we actually do? I want to say two things to close. The first is a challenge. Do not build technology for communities, build solutions with communities. There is a version of social innovation that is at its heart about the innovator, about a clever idea, about a TED talk, about a pitch deck. That's not what we need. We need people who are willing to sit in the room, the actual room, or the Zoom call with the teachers, the parents, the school leaders, and the children and ask, what do you actually need? What will actually help and make your life easier? And then build that. The second thing I want to say is this: some of the most important educational innovations of the next decade may emerge from undeserved communities themselves. In fact, there's a prediction that Africa will become the next AI powerhouse. So I believe this deeply, that the people who understand the problem best are often the people living inside of the problem. The teacher who built our own audio learning resources because nothing else existed. The parents who organized a community learning program because the school wasn't enough. The young person who taught themselves to code and then taught 20 others. Don't discount grassroots innovation. Don't assume that the best ideas come from Silicon Valley or from international development organizations. They come from everywhere, including and often especially from the places with the most to get. What I want from each of us today is simple: collaborate across disciplines, commit to ethical practice, run real experiments in real communities, build ecosystems that include rather than ecosystem that exclude. The two exist, the resources, though never enough, are growing. The moment is now. And I close with this slide. Next slide, please. I would like to, appreciate everyone. And I want us to think about the North Star for all of us working in this space. AI should not merely make education more sufficient or more efficient. It should make education more human, more inclusive, and more equitable. More human, that's the ambition, not faster, not cheaper, more human. So thanks for the time and attention. I'm sorry I have to, leave after this, but happy to connect on LinkedIn and happy to respond to any questions